Thank you everyone very much for joining our webinar today on the topic of how data can be your newest revenue stream, a guide to data monetization. So first, some brief introductions. Today I have the pleasure of introducing Wayne Eckerson, who is a familiar name to many in the business intelligence field, and the principal consultant of the Eckerson Group. So this is actually the second time we are presenting a webinar together, having discussed self-service analytics several months back. Today, however, the topic of discussion is data monetization. Wayne has recently published a report titled A Guide to Monetizing Data, which will be referenced during today's webinar and also will be available as a white paper on our website after this concludes. So Wayne, thanks very much for joining the webinar today. Now the agenda, fairly straightforward. Wayne will begin a discussion by highlighting some of the key report findings in the report. Then I'll take over with a guide to data monetization using Dundas BI. This will be a live demo of the application, and then we're going to wrap things up with a Q&A session. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, Wayne.
Great, thanks, Vlad. In many ways, data monetization is the next wave of BI. You know, we've gone from reporting to analytics and embedded BI, and I think the next logical progression is data monetization. And this is kind of exciting because it moves us from the back office to the front office if we're BI staff members or managers, from a cost center to a profit center. The other thing that I see going on is that executives, business folks, are starting to realize, with all this talk about big data and analytics and data science, which is seeping into the mainstream consciousness, that they are sitting on a gold mine. You know, that if they just look at the kind of data that they've been collecting for years and years, customer transaction data, customer interaction data, product usage data, product activity data, customer activity data. If they start looking at this as an asset or a product, they can begin to imagine that other companies may want to use this data and pay for it, if not their customers, you know, feeding that information back to customers in a more of an aggregated a way that adds value and makes their product more sticky. So let's go to the next slide. And this should have the 3 levels of data monetization on it. I've categorized the types of monetization into 3 groups, as you can see. It's a pretty broad definition. The first level is simply informing employees, and that's BI as we've known it and loved it or hated it for the last 20, 30 years, using data to make our processes more efficient, to save money, cut costs, and make better decisions, which you could say the decisions could impact the top line, but oftentimes that's hard to calculate. The next level of data monetization is enriching products, and this is wrapping information around an existing product, whether it's tangible or intangible, and providing information to users about their usage of that product. And we'll talk more about this. We're seeing the emergence of smart products out there in the marketplace that wrap information around their tangible products. And of course, software vendors are jumping on the bandwagon here, since their medium, software, internet, is very conducive to monetizing data. And then finally, the last is creating data products and services, which is what most people think of as monetizing data. And that's you know, selling data as a service, selling data analytics or analytics about the data as a solution, and also providing professional services, whether that's consulting or data integration or something else. So let's go to the next slide. This should be building blocks of success. And what I've found is that if you're going to monetize data, especially the latter 2 levels that we just discussed, you need a bunch of things. You need executives with vision who not only talk the talk but walk the walk, allocate their time and the time of their chief lieutenants to this data strategy. You need a cross-functional team of specialists. You need product managers who are experienced at productizing things. You need sales and marketing and folks who know how to bring things to market. You need developers, especially if you're building mobile applications connected to the internet. And you need data and analytics professionals. And what we're seeing in some cases is that internal BI folks and data warehousing folks are being tapped to help lead these monetization efforts. You obviously need good data. And by good data, I mean it's best if it's voluminous, and it's best if the data has lots of attributes. So you can create wide, flat tables that are very rich in terms of being able to use it for mining purposes, to create benchmarks and added value like that. Obviously, you need analytics because data by itself is pretty useless. You need analytics to compare, to calculate, and do all other kinds of things with that data so it has value. You need processes for developing your data analytics solution. So you need people who understand the user requirements and can translate that into specifications. And you need go-to-market processes. It's one thing to build something, it's another thing to actually bring it to market and make money off of it. You also need a strong platform to ingest data, to store it, to refine it, to provide access to users. And you need a strong delivery platform as well to make sure the data and analysis gets to the users. Traditionally, that's been through email or FTP, but now we have more advanced methods such as embedding analytics and data into existing operational applications. So let's go to the next slide. And we're going to go through each of those levels one by one. So this should be about informing employees. And as I said, we've been doing this for many years. And there's three levels here as well. There's obviously reporting and analysis off a data warehouse using dashboards and reports. We've been doing that for a long, long time. That's more historical reporting, rear view mirror look at data. The newest wave is advanced analytics, data mining, data science, machine learning, where we mine historical data to create equations or models that we can use then to interpret new data as it comes in and make predictions and recommendations. And this last category is one we haven't talked a lot about, but it's smart applications, or also known as custom analytic applications. And think of these as dashboards on steroids that are very action-oriented. They're embedded usually in other applications. They use machine learning to automate various tasks and operational workflows. Mostly operational in nature, and well, actually there's an example right there of this from a retail operation that wanted to make its managers much more productive by giving them a machine learning enabled application so they weren't stuck in the back room looking at the computer all day. This would allow them to get out on the store floor and interact with customers and employees. So what it does, it provides the typical dashboard metrics and peer-based comparisons with other stores, but also in this example, it uses a predictive model to help them schedule their staffing for the following week. And that model uses past purchasing trends, past staffing schedules, as well as events, promotions, and weather data to predict the demand the following week. And then basically says you need X amount, a number of hours staffed over these days at these times. And it explains the rationale for the model or the projection. as you can possibly see there, if it's large enough on your screen. It's certainly not on mine. So that is a smart or custom analytic application. I think we're going to see a lot more of those as machine learning gets infused into everything that we build on the software front. So let's go to the next slide. And this is the second level of data monetization. This is enriching products, and I think this is a build slide. So the thing I think you're seeing here is this Fitbit application. So here's an example of a wearable, a device, a tangible product that communicates or delivers most of its value through data, through a very personalized dashboard that allows users to track their own activity, you know, how many steps they've taken, what they've eaten, how much they weigh, as well as compare themselves in a friendly way to friends who also participate, and provide some trending over time as well. If you go to the next build, this actually is an application that Eckerson Group, my company, built. It's an online assessment and benchmarking tool, and we've built the report. You can actually allow users to see how they compare in whatever we're assessing to everyone else who's taking the assessment, and then using filters, slice and dice the data to actually do a benchmark with a peer group. So this is a way to enrich a product. And then the final build, this is actually from Informatica, and it's from Informatica's support team. They built this application that's built on top of all the customer support data from all of their customers who've given them permission to aggregate that data and feed it back to them in the form of benchmarks, and in this case you see recommendations, as well as the typical dashboard, you know, usage data. So this I thought was a pretty powerful tool. I think it's called Discovery IQ, and it's used to monitor operations, benchmark capabilities, forecast usage, manage upgrades, so kind of like the scheduling smart application we just discussed. This will help step users through an upgrade process, and then provide recommendations and alerts based on their activity and what they should be looking for, or what they should be doing to avoid a problem or to maximize their usage of the product. So turbocharging dashboards, I think, is something of the future. Now, in the case of this Informatica product, they, you know, if you're an Informatica customer with any level of support product or maintenance agreement, you will get this for free. So they're not charging extra for it. So it's really making the existing product much more valuable to customers. So if we go to the next slide, this should be about categories of enrichment. So there are many ways to enrich an existing product with data and analytics. And this is by no means an exhaustive list, but I've come up with 4 major categories of enrichment. And I'll just quickly go through these. One is the way users interact with that data, usually through a dashboard or some kind of smart application. You know, at the very basic level, they just view the data. Then they can perhaps navigate through it, drill up, drill down, drill across. The next level would be to search or explore the data in a more ad hoc fashion. Then to edit it, modify it, to completely personalize it with perhaps new data, new calculations and metrics. And then finally to model the data, use some kind of simulation capability to do what-if scenarios. With analytics enrichment, typically we see in these applications the need to look at the status of activity, how it compares to plan or a previous period, trends of that activity over time, how that activity is forecast to change during the next period or two. And we talked about benchmarks, so how your activity compares to others in your area, your domain, or your industry. And then finally, customized recommendations based on your activity that's been compared to everyone's activity who has the same characteristics as you. So proactive recommendations to avoid problems or maximize ROI. Creation, that's the ability to create something from scratch or seemingly from scratch. For casual users, that might be just taking a snapshot of an existing interactive dashboard and saving that for the next day. Creating custom groups, custom metrics, custom dashboards, and storyboards that tell a story of the data based on your analysis. And then finally, perhaps the most important are the actions. It's one thing to deliver insights, it's another thing to do something about them. So there's many ways that you can enrich an application with actions. One is just to insert comments in the analytics solution, in the dashboard, in the table. Another is to generate alerts based on metrics and predefined thresholds. Another is to provide forms so that users can enter data. So it's not just an analytical application, it's both an analytical and an operational one. And like our scheduling application that I showed earlier from the retail organization, the ability to update data, make changes, or actually initiate a workflow, such as scheduling staffing hours. So let's go to the next slide. And this is our monetization level. And there's 3 basic strategies other than professional services. One is to syndicate data. That's basically just to sell the raw data that you've collected. Second is to build an analytics on top of that raw data and sell the analytics as a solution. And the third is to upcharge for analytics within your existing product. So these are fairly related and they kind of blur together in many situations, but let me just go through these. So the first level, if we go to the next slide, is syndicate data. There are companies in every industry that are information providers, and essentially what they do is aggregate data across transactional environments. So IMS Health, now called Quintiles IMS, is the biggest aggregator of pharmaceutical transactions. And they're sitting on this treasure trove of data at this point. As you can see here, it should give you a readout of all the data they've collected, in the petabyte range, hundreds or tens of hundreds of petabytes. And so this is a huge gold mine that they've monetized quite successfully. And as you can imagine, more than just providing the raw data to companies, they have bundled in all kinds of analytical solutions. They've bundled in professional services. They've segmented the data into different domains and provide subscriptions to those. So once you're sitting on this gold mine of data, there's a lot of different things that you can do. So let's go to the next slide, and this should be the second level here, which is data analytics solutions. So if you're going to do more than just sell the raw data in a subscription format, you probably want to build an application. A lot of people want to build applications on top of those and take those applications to market. So those applications are very data intensive, data rich, and analytically rich. So to do that, you need a strong team, which I mentioned this before. You need product managers, sales and marketing managers, applications developers, and then you need folks near and dear to our heart, which are the data and the analytics specialists. And they all need to work together to help bring this product to market, sell it, support it, and maintain it through its life cycle. Now, if we go to the next build out, you'll see that you also need a platform to support this solution, and that platform has to be fairly robust, especially if you're pulling in data over the Internet of Things, which is data that streams in at high volume. So you need a robust ingest method, you need a way to store that data and secure it, you need a way to aggregate it and refine it, as well as provide access to it and give customers a means to use it and get some value out of it. So let's go to the next slide. This should say Pulse Mining. If it doesn't, let me know. Pulse Mining is a Australian software developer that services the mining industry, the people who dig raw materials out of the earth. And they've traditionally built ERP applications for mid-market mining companies. And they got this idea that there was a huge need out there for their customers to pull together data from a lot of different applications. So they decided to build this analytical solution based on data that they've acquired over the years, as well as the customer's own data. And what they did, if you keep building it out, you'll see that they didn't just automatically build the solution. They actually did a lot of consulting at first to figure out exactly what customers might want and might need. And they tapped their own BI team, the head of their own BI team, to help participate in this project and bring this product to market. And now it's a very rich product with dozens of different modules for managing and monitoring every aspect of a mining operation. It can pull from a lot of different ERP solutions, not just theirs, but others like SAP's. So let's go to the next slide. And this is about upcharging for analytics, right? So this is an area that we spend a lot of time on, largely because a lot of software vendors are incorporating analytics as a value-added service to their customers, and customers in return are beginning to expect lots of data and very compelling dashboards and analytical charts and graphics to be able to analyze their own activity within this product, this software product, which these days is now moving increasingly to the cloud, which makes it easier to embed data in analytics. But to succeed here, there's a number of different things that you need to think about. And truth be told, if you're building a standalone solution, you need to think about these things as well. So let's just go through these really quickly. Should be on the build versus buy slide. And if you build that completely out, you'll see that the first thing you need to decide is if you're going to deliver data analytics within your existing solution, are you going to build those analytics, those reports, those dashboards, those self-service capabilities, or are you going to buy it from a third-party provider like Dundas? And there are reasons for both. On the build side, in fact, when we built our own online assessment tool, it was a very simple report we built. One report. It's got like 6 parameters, and it's never going to change. And we didn't have to integrate. Well, we wanted to integrate it with our assessment platform. So we actually decided to build our report. In the future, we actually will embed a BI tool as we provide access to the aggregated data on a subscription basis. But most companies are actually deciding, especially if they're commercial software vendors, to embed a commercial analytics product because it gives them state-of-the-art functionality, and the vendor is responsible for upgrading the product and adapting it to every new technology and capability that comes along. It's also great if you need to support lots of reports. The reports are complex. The users keep sending in new requirements for those reports, and you need advanced functionality and also deep integration with your existing product. So we've written reports on that topic at Eckerson Group, and we've given, I think, I think we did a webcast with Dundas on this topic as well. So if you go to the next slide, this one is about knowing your strategy. So if you're going to add analytics to your solution or your application, you got to look around at the marketplace. So you're trying to catch up, or you're trying to get ahead, an edge on the competition, get a lead, or you're just trying to make your product stickier and more engaging. Whatever your strategy, it's going to have an implication for how you price this value-added service that you're providing. So let's go to the next slide, because this talks about setting prices. And you've probably seen in your own navigation through the internet and buying these internet-based services that Most software providers are offering 3 levels of capabilities, and analytics can fall very easily into a tiered pricing schedule like this. For instance, you might want to offer some basic reports at the basic level. At the plus level, you might want to offer some customization, perhaps some, I can't read it here myself, but what's actually said there, but you might want to offer some self-service capabilities. And then at the advanced or pro level, maybe this is where you have the alerts, the benchmarks, and the really valuable services. The key here is to add just enough at each level to kind of tempt people to want to upgrade to get the capabilities in the next level. And below the boxes there's a little pricing model about how you might actually set the prices for those 3 tiers based on the added cost of the analytics to the core product and the prices of your best competitor. Let's go to the next slide. This should be about knowing your users. And probably this is the most important because a lot of us think, oh, okay, customers want analytics. This is something we can use to get an advantage, or we have to do this as a cost of doing business to keep up with the competitors. But just throwing some data and some dashboards and reports up there is not going to get you any adherence. It's probably not going to succeed at all, and you'll end up turning it off. What you really need to do is, just like any software product or project, is to figure out what your customers really want. And that's not easy. It requires you to roll up your sleeves and do some requirements gathering. And here we're showing you that you might want to create a profile of 3 or 4 personas and really understand what they're trying to do and how they use information and where are their pain points. And if you build it out to the next, you'll see that you can map out their workflow and exactly find out where they need information, where they're not getting it, and what types of analytics would be required to deliver information when they need it. So this type of requirements gathering really can pay big dividends, but I do find that most people pay short shrift to it. As a result, they don't get as much value out of their analytics implementation. So let's go to the next slide. This is about operationalizing analytics, basically taking your new analytic capability, whether it's standalone or an add-on to an existing product, and trying to monetize it. And the key here is that it's not enough just to build the capability. You have to think like a product manager. So this means you have to think about, if you just build this all out, how are you going to sell it, and who's going to sell it? And do you need to retrain your salespeople, or do you need to bring in additional folks with analytics expertise? How are you going to market the product? What messages are you going to use? What content do you need to make available to convince customers to upgrade or purchase this solution? What kind of training do you need to provide customers? What kind of webcasts, online videos, documentation? How are you going to support customers? Is your team going to do that, or you need to farm that out to the vendor if you've decided to buy the analytics capability? Are there legal issues? For instance, if you're using customer data and aggregating it to create benchmarks, do you need to rethink your opt-in and privacy policy? Are you going to have service level agreements for the performance of this data analytics capability? Do you need to inform customers if there's a third party processing their data? Billing or pricing, we've talked about. What happens if there's a bug? Who fixes it? How quickly does it get fixed? What's the process? Are you going to enhance this? We assume you will. How does that happen? How do you upgrade the analytics capability separately from the application, and vice versa? Then finally, what's your rollout plan? It's probably too risky to roll it out to all your customers at once, so you might want to think about how to segment the rollout to minimize risk and maximize your learning so that you can optimize how you deliver it to your entire customer base. The next slide is about selecting the right platform, and this is the basis of another report we wrote called the Modern Analytics Platform. And I do think when you're talking about analytics, in particular, these are the key things you need to look at. Is it comprehensive? Support any mode of BI, any type of user? Is it modern? Is it designed for the web, for the cloud, for mobile, for APIs? Is it embeddable? Because BI, frankly, is moving inside of other applications. Or you're customizing the analytics application so that it's completely tailored to what your needs are. Does it have a flexible data architecture so that it can maximize performance no matter what the workload? Is it offer, especially in a monetization environment, does it have multi-tenant administration so that your customers have their own ability to administer their users and give them access to just the data and the functionality they need to do their jobs, but nothing more? Then finally, does the vendor have experience working with customers to monetize their data and embed analytics into their application? So the final slide is about decision points, and it's just meant to be a summary slide, things you need to think about. What type of monetization are you going to choose? I've talked about 3 different levels: inform your employees, enrich your products, or create new data products and services. Are you going to offer this for free or for a fee? Are you going to offer just the data? Are you going to build analytics around that data? Are you going to build professional services around all of those things? Is it a new or existing product that you're creating? And are you going to use a new team to build out these analytic capabilities and data capabilities, or your existing team? So that's my presentation. I know I've run a little long. Unfortunately, we got started a little slowly, and I apologize for that. But at this point, I will turn it over to Vlad.
Perfect. Thanks, Wayne. We persevered despite the some of the issues we had, but that's all right. For everybody listening, we are going to take questions for both Wayne and myself at the end of my demo, which I'm going to start right about now. All right, so first, I just have a quick introduction what I'm going to be discussing today. So this slide that I'm introducing right now, you saw during Wayne's presentation as well. This is the levels of monetization that we have. So Wayne described the 3 different levels: informing employees, enriching products, and monetizing the actual data. For my part of the presentation, I will be focusing on the latter 2. These are the ones that are more customer-facing, and the one of the areas where Dundas BI really stands out, because it's not just an analytics tool, but also a flexible and completely customizable platform that's going to allow you to deploy this to your clients, have multi-tenancy, kind of like a SaaS environment, and so on. So how we can actually accommodate that? Well, Dundas BI was built from the ground up with different user types in mind, and this actually allows you to help tailor their experience based on their role. So our application, we have 3 types of licenses: a standard user, a power user, and also a developer. And it's possible to present the experience in different ways depending on who actually logs onto the system. The choice, how you do that, is of course yours, and one example I've seen is by providing a seamlessly embedded view for consumer users in a portal, and then also having a white labeled solution for the users that are actually going to be building out the content. The fact that we have open APIs, which you can see down here on the bottom, makes it very easy to create the exact view that you want for users. I will be demonstrating an example of that. One last thing to note is Dundas BI is 100% web-based. This does mean that we do in fact have a centralized administration layer, which you can see on the left. So this will allow you to control your security settings, dashboards, and so on, we also do have a built-in multi-tenancy feature. And this is going to make it very easy to manage all your different customers and clients that are accessing the application. All right, so let's go ahead and kick things off. I'm going to switch my screen very quickly once again. And we're actually going to begin with the discussion of white labeling the application. So white labeling is the idea of changing the look and feel of the application in order to match your company's branding, existing branding and colors, so that your end users do not actually realize they are in a different third-party tool. And this is an example of, if we take a look at the 3 levels that Wayne described, this is enriching a product. So right now, what we're looking at is the default logon screen for Dundas BI. Now, as you can see, we have our logo, and these are our default colors. Now, with a little bit of just CSS code, it's actually possible to modify the logos, the fonts, the colors. All these changes occur in a CSS override file that resides on the Dundas BI server. And I'm going to bring in an example of what one of these files might look like. And this really isn't a lot of code. For those familiar with CSS, this should in fact be fairly straightforward. You can see we're specifying a new image for the header. We are changing the color of some of our text as well as the font and also the background color. The result of this, I'm just going to switch my tab over here in my browser. This is it. So we can see the changes that have been applied. Once again, with just a few lines of code, something like this is in fact quite easy to do. Now I'm actually going to bring up back my presentation and show you a white labeled solution which kind of takes it to the next level. This is one of our clients, and there's a white paper or a case study rather available on our website. Unless you are, I mean, even if you're very familiar with Dundas BI, I doubt that you would look at this and think, yes, these guys have white labeled Dundas BI in their own application. It looks completely different, and of course it's just one of the possibilities that you can get with the application. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you one more example. Let me just very quickly bring this up on my other screen over here. And this is an example of using our APIs to further customize the sort of inside of the application. Right now we are looking at Dundas BI. I'm already logged into the system. So in the middle of my screen, this is in fact a dashboard that was created using the product. On the top, I have a toolbar, and on the left, I have a navigation menu. Now, on the right side of my screen is this panel. We call this the Explore panel. So this lists all the objects that my user currently has access to. So imagine that if you're offering a solution to your clients, whether it's SaaS or doesn't even need to be, you might present them a view like this, where they can maybe play around with some of the data that you provide to them. Now, if we do take a look on the right, there's a lot of information available here. And because, just to let everybody know, I'm logged in as a developer licensed user in the application, that's why I'm seeing all of these items that are here, whereas a standard user in the system, by default, will only see metric sets and below. Now, what this example does is leveraging our APIs. We're allowing you to modify the tree structure so that the user sees exactly what you want them to see. For instance, data connectors. These are the actual connections to my raw data sources. Perhaps I do not want my users playing around with those. Clicking on the hide icon removes it from the tree structure. Perhaps I'll do the same with cube perspectives. Maybe I'll just leave them, let's say, the data cubes. Data cubes are data models that have already cleaned up and prepared data ready to go. Now, for instance, let's say that slideshows, which you can create in Dundas BI, perhaps that term is a little bit foreign to my users. Maybe they know it better by stories. So I'll type that in, rename the element, and now you can see it's listed as stories over here. So of course, I am doing this kind of on an ad hoc fashion where I'm applying this to my current view using our JavaScript override files. You will be able to permanently make these changes for all your users that log into the application. All right, so let's keep it going. I'm now going to jump into an example of actually monetizing data. So from my navigation panel over here on the left, I'll go ahead and open up an existing dashboard that my user has access to. This is a canned report that was created for my user to interact with. For example, I can play around with my filters over here. Let's change this maybe to 2008 and above. I can show or hide specific series. I can even revisualize my chart over here. I also do have access to a right-click context menu that I can use to maybe drill up on the information, view it at a different level, and so on. I can also bring up a detailed view of my information and so on. There's a lot more that's available here, but if you do have questions about it, please let us know after this. I'm simply going to move on just due to our time constraint where I want to show you what else this user can do. This, as I mentioned, this is a canned report. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of users do come to expect something like this built into their tools right away. Now, analysts and other power users will require more capabilities, and this is an opportunity to further monetize the user experience that you provide to your clients by introducing, as Wayne mentioned, different tiers of users. So Dundas BI does allow power users and developers to actually perform their own analysis and create new visualizations. Once again, from the left navigation menu, I'll click on New, and this does allow me to create new content. And let's go ahead and quickly create what we call a metric set. A metric set is our term for a KPI. Essentially, this is our analysis designer. So within this designer, I can use existing data models that have been made available to my users to drag and drop fields that I'm interested in seeing. So for example, I'll head over to a data cube. Here I have one that contains information about my sales, clients, and reps. Let's build out something very quickly. For example, I'll grab total spend, drag it out onto here. Let's also introduce product price. So you'll notice that Dundas BI automatically revisualizes the data based on best practices. Under dimensions, I do have a date. So what I can do is just grab this date, introduce it into the rows section. We once again revisualize this time to a line chart. With a right click, I'm able to change the level. Let's go from year to month just to get a little bit more granularity over here. Maybe I'll zoom out a little bit as well. So there's just lots of different ways of playing around with the information. And for many users, something like this might be considered invaluable. Now, one other thing I'll do is I'll actually grab this region section, drag it out onto where we call columns. So now we are breaking down the information by our different regions. I can hover over one of them. It's going to tell me which region this applies to. Now, you might notice this, okay, it's beginning to look a little bit messy. So let's change this up once again. I'm just going to freeze my visualization, make some changes really quickly. Let's put the region as a row. Let's add the state value to that. I'm going to take my date and add it as a slicer so I can filter by it. And now let's revisualize this to, for instance, a tree map. So you can see on the left side of my screen, it is recommending certain visualizations for me. A tree map makes the data look like this. Right, and so there is a lot more that the user can do, but once again, just if you do have questions, feel free to get in touch with us after. I will move on because I want to demonstrate some of the other capabilities of the application. Maybe just one last thing I'll do is revisualize this very quickly to a map. And so based on the data that Dundas BI is actually looking at, it has figured out that a map is going to work well for this type of information because we have state values over here. So just to wrap this section up, as I mentioned, for some clients, the canned reports are going to be expected. Everybody wants to have canned reports now. For others, they may want to have a little bit more, and that is a good opportunity. Have them pay a bit of a premium in order to get these, what we call power user features. So the next topic of discussion that I will bring up is multi-tenancy. Wayne mentioned multi-tenancy very quickly, and I will also show an example. So multi-tenancy is essentially how I like to describe it in Dundas BI is it takes your single instance of the application and to some degree virtualizes it. You can have one sort of virtualized instance per client or per tenant, as we call it, where you can separate data, have different users that aren't aware of other clients. So this has implications for security. You definitely don't want tenant A seeing any data for tenant B and vice versa. And you can have shared content amongst tenants, but also create one-off dashboards for them. So I have a user in my system, tenant 1, and I'm just going to log on and bring up a dashboard that we've already built out ahead of time. I'm not going to go through this dashboard. That's not the point of the exercise. I just want to bring to your attention the fact, the logo that we have on the top left, it says AdventureWorks. So this is the name of the client. And if you take a look at the color scheme, everything is very bright. We have these oranges and these warm colors to match the client's logo. And if you do take a look at this information over here, the location analysis, we have several Canadian cities and provinces, Vancouver, Quebec City, Ontario, and Alberta. These are also being shown on the map, on the embedded Bing map over there. I'm going to log back in now as tenant 2. This is the same dashboard that we just had a look at. Notice that the logo for the client changed over there on the top left of the screen. The color scheme is different as well, and the data is once again different. So everything that I'm showing here is something that multi-tenancy kind of really makes easy and brings to life in Dundas BI. So the branding, the filtering of the data, and coloring the themes, all of that is available for the user. Now, something else that you will notice, if you take a look on the left side of my screen, that the user that I logged in as, I've actually allowed them access to the admin section. So this user is in fact a tenant administrator, meaning that on the client side there is somebody that I deem technical and I trust them to go ahead and kind of administer the application on their own. So just notice on the left side of the screen the admin panel, a little bit restricted. I have access to certain projects and files that my tenant has access to. I can now navigate also to the account section, and you can see that for my tenant I have 3 users set up. My administrator that I logged in as, an executive, and an analyst. Now what I'll do is I'll log out of here. I'm going to log on using my Windows credentials. My Windows user here is not only a tenant administrator, but a full system admin. So if I do navigate to the admin section, notice my left navigation menu has a lot more items in it. I see access to a lot more projects. So this actually lets me know that in my instance, there's a lot of projects available to the users, but the tenant has a restricted view. Now, I can also navigate to our multi-tenancy section over here, where I notice that, hey, I do have 3 different tenants set up. I can either go ahead, edit, I can see exactly how many licenses have been allocated to the user, how many users are actually using the application. So this will allow me to, for instance, I can go in here and take a look at the usage, and if the usage is really high, I can go to my client and I can say, hey, listen, over the past month, you have used up all your licenses at one point in time. Maybe you should consider buying some more from us. So that's an example of, once again, using this as a profit center over there. And creating a tenant, I'll just very quickly bring that up. Very easy to do. You can specify the name, give it a special pattern for the account names, and then of course allocate a certain number of seats. So this is another great example of if you are going to offer tiered pricing to your clients, like a standard package, a silver and a gold. Maybe the gold has, let's say, 50 power user seats and 50 standard users. So you could go ahead, set that up, and kind of have caps on what the user has access to. So that is my example of multi-tenancy. I will show just one last thing before we open it up to the Q&A session. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to bring up another web page that I have. This last topic talks about embedding. So embedding is, once again, we're kind of stepping back to an example of enriching the product. Here I have a simple website. This is basically a template that I found online, and I made a couple modifications to it. The example being that maybe this is your website. Maybe it's a portal that you have for your users. Now, as I said, I made a couple changes. So if you take a look on the top navigation panel, I've added a reports button. By clicking on that, I'm actually bringing up that very same dashboard we were taking a look at just a second ago. So this is an example of embedding the experience right into your own portal. Now, once again, in this case, users have absolutely no idea that they're using Dundas BI. In my case, I did kind of display a pop-up. This can be changed. You have complete control over it. There's a lot of integration that's possible with the platform. You can just maybe take one particular chart and display it out on your page. Also worth mentioning, this is fully interactive depending on the permissions that you set up for your users as the administrator. You can allow them access to maybe drill up on the information. But also one last thing I'll mention before we wrap up. I am currently viewing this in full screen mode where all our Dundas BI toolbars are hidden. If you give the user the necessary permissions, I will be able to, for instance, right-click, exit my full screen view, and here, just as you saw before, I have access to my left navigation menu. So maybe I go ahead and construct a new dashboard. If I'm a power user, maybe I construct a new metric set. So you can embed either simply the consumer user experience, you can embed the power user experience, or you can have it be standalone in the application for everybody. Okay, so that brings my side of things to a close. What I'll do is simply bring up the presentation one more time, and let's go ahead and open it up to our Q&A session. So anybody that has questions, feel free to type them in, and just want to see, I did actually have a question for Wayne. Wayne, are you still with us? Wonder if...
Can't hear him.
Yep.
There
Okay.
I go.
Perfect. All right.
Thanks.
So, Wayne, I did have a question for you just before we let everyone else have at it. When I talk to clients over the phone and they're looking to integrate a BI tool into their solution, I sometimes get a little bit of pushback where if I say that, you know, obviously the solution costs money, but there is room for monetization, as we just described. A lot of users, especially the technical users, are very shy about that. They say, no, our budgets are already set. We have a lot of competition. We can't really afford to charge our customers more. And we kind of approach a roadblock where they want to have the BI capabilities, but they're sort of scared, or maybe coy is a good way of putting it, to propose that to their clients. Is there anything that you would suggest to maybe myself as well as to them? How can we kind of further that discussion? Is this just something that is now going to be standard in applications? They need to kind of admit that fact, or is there another way of going about it?
Yeah, well, when talking with developers, that's a tough one because their natural tendency, obviously, is to build stuff using code, and they have ultimate confidence in their ability to build anything in a timely manner. So why would you ever want to buy something?
Yeah.
Now, what we see is that, yeah, a lot of companies, they start out building these kinds of capabilities that you demonstrated, but then it gets just out of control. You know, one or two reports turns into, you know, dozens of reports with an endless set of backlog of requests for new functionality and, you know, security requirements. And before long, you know, if there is a strong need among the customer base for strong reporting and dashboarding and self-service capabilities and multi-tenant capabilities, it's just going to go beyond what the development shop had in mind. And they're going to have to start allocating the time of core developers to analytics, which is not what they hired them for. So I usually find that you kind of have to wait in some cases for them to figure out themselves that paying a little bit up front and working with a commercial BI tool that's specialized in this is going to stay up to date with all the technology. And it has a track record of embedding into applications and working with OEMs. They'll get there eventually, but their natural tendency is to build, not to buy.
Mm-hmm. Great answer. I'm going to maybe play that back to every client that tells me, gives us that. Okay. We have another question. This is also directed towards you, Wayne. And on the slide that we both displayed, the levels of monetization inform employees, enrich products, and monetize data. Is it, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, is it essentially a ladder where you have to inform before you can enrich and you have to enrich before you can monetize, or can you just jump into the monetization right away?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, like BI maturity, you can certainly go right to monetization. But, all the experience that you gain from doing BI internally and, wrapping information around existing products, and 401k providers, utility providers have always sent us reports as consumers, and we've all seen those things. So getting your feet dirty with the basics is always going to help down the road when you want to try to do something much more sophisticated. But yes, you can leap right to the end game, but you're going to have to hire people who've done it before. And it may not be cheap or easy, and there may be hiccups in the road, but you can get there quickly, more quickly than if you have to go through the other two steps. So I'm kind of waffling on the answer, but yes, you can do it. You can go straight there, but it's better if you take the slow road, but that's obviously a slow road. So each company is going to be a little different.
Do you see, in your own experience, is there a high success rate with people that just jump into monetizing as opposed to taking the longer approach?
I think it comes down to project management and not trying to boil the ocean. We learned all those lessons back in the early days of data warehousing, and probably any software domain has gone through that cycle as well. You get all excited about the potential and the possibilities, and you just end up trying to do too much, and the project implodes of its own weight. So, best practice is really identify, 1, 2, or maybe 3 use cases for monetizing your data. Understand your customers really well, just like Pulse Mining did. They went and did a lot of consulting first and built custom analytic applications before they created a packaged offering. Really figure out what your customers want, prioritize those needs, and only address the top 2 or 3. And deliver something in 12 to 16 months, 12 to 16 weeks. And then, iterate and move fast and learn from your mistakes. So I think that's the wisest course.
For sure. Great answer. All right. So I'm looking through our questions. If anybody does have more, please feel free. There were a couple that have been answered by my colleague Ariel. The questions did come up about showing or hiding things like an edit button for a standard user or specific widgets. Just to let everybody know, pretty much everything in Dundas BI is considered a privilege or a permission. So you can take a user or a group of users, or even everybody for one specific tenant, and let's say remove all their edit privileges or remove their ability to right-click, to drill up or revisualize. This will allow you to create that dashboard experience that you want. And as I demonstrated on the first dashboard I brought up, there were different ways to actually use the data. You can either have filters that exist on the dashboard itself ahead of time, or you can let the user right-click and have access to those filters. So everything will be customizable and once again is considered a privilege. And another question that came up is about embedding Dundas BI. So I did show that sample where we displayed the dashboard in a pop-up. That was actually very, very easy to set up. So we recently revamped our embed library. It is now a little piece of JavaScript that you can go ahead. We offer it for download. You download it, put it into the solution, and basically make a couple of calls. You don't even, there's really no actual JavaScript involved anymore. Just with a little bit of code, you can get that up and running. All right, and I think it's fair to say that there will be no more questions. We can move on. So I'm just going to very quickly wrap this up in terms of next steps. So regarding the presentation, if you're new to Dundas BI and you liked what you saw during the demonstration, whether it was the end user experience or the fact that you can embed or extend the application, by all means, you can always get in touch with us. We're happy to help. You might be talking to myself or one of my colleagues where we want to make sure that the solution will be a good fit for your technical requirements. We do have an online trial as well as a full product download, and then we're always happy to do some product walkthroughs just to give you more details about the application. So that brings our webinar to a close. I'd like to thank Wayne Eckerson for joining and providing some really great insights into this topic of monetizing data. And everyone, also thanks for joining and have yourselves a great day.